Scott Frost took a veiled shot at former athletic director Trev Alberts. As we know, Frost, now the head coach at Central Florida. Trev Alberts, now the athletic director of Texas A&M. Frost held kind of one of his more extended press conferences, first extended, other than his hiring press conference. But you were fascinated by this. We posted it coming home on Wednesday, and it took off. I mean, this thing became quite a story in our market, just the shot that he took at Al. He didn't say Alberts by name, but made it pretty clear.
I'll read it. Should I read it?
Yeah, read it, please.
Okay. So you noticed this Wednesday afternoon or early Wednesday evening. This is what Frost said. And he's talking about Terry, I'm going to say Mohajir. Does that sound about right? That he's talking about the U.S.
His new athletic director at Central Florida.
Yeah, okay. So he says, Terry's been great. I'm so grateful to have an AD that's on my side and working alongside me. When you're in the other situation, it's really difficult and it's really debilitating, to be honest with you. When you feel like you're working and you don't have somebody right there alongside you. Terry and I are on the same page. He's trying to give us everything that he can to be successful. It's a good partnership. I'm grateful to him. So, as you pointed out, it's a very thinly veiled shot at Trev Alberts. And Frost is saying his situation at Nebraska perhaps dragged him back.
What's interesting, though, is he did have the AD at Nebraska on his side.
And went 12-20.
Moose.
Yeah, and Frost's record with Moose was 12-20. And then Trev Alberts was hired. And this is when we get into the interesting meat of the discussion. Alberts was hired in July of 2021. So right away, any AD, it doesn't matter if it's Trev Alberts or Bob Devaney, the situation is going to be tough for that AD.
That was on the heels of 2020 when Nebraska went 3-5, 2020, 3-5.
Yeah, my bad. 3-5.
But they were double-digit favorites against Minnesota and Illinois.
Bad loss.
The Illinois loss was a bad Illinois team.
It was a horrifying loss.
And honestly, that was one of the worst. And then Minnesota came in to Lincoln that year with like 40 players.
Depleted.
And Nebraska, it's funny though, those two games really kind of turned the tide of that year.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't feel. They won that Rutgers game late, and they beat Purdue,
and then declined the bowl.
And they beat Penn State, but they kind of fell into that win. They were very fortunate to win that game.
That was a very disappointing season for Penn State across the board. So there's the setup. Now
that's what Alberts is looking at when he comes here.
That's what Alberts is looking at, and and this is where people would be interested. Because we're privy to some information, but in real time, I hope people understand in real time, some of this stuff you just can't really address too much, although we did to a certain degree. But we know that Trev and Frost got off on a bad foot. But it didn't really surprise me then. Doesn't surprise me now. Again, I just emphasize 12-20. Trev's got to assess the situation. And if you assess that situation as Sean Callahan or Trev Alberts or some other AD, you're going to look at it and go, oh, this isn't, hey, there's a lot that's not good here, right? You just don't give him you don't give the guy a clean slate.
Well, and let's go back to when they forced Bill Moose out, and they forced him out.
Nebraska did.
Bill Moose didn't retire.
100%.
They did that for a reason.
Yeah, that's probably right. I didn't think of that angle, but yeah.
They did it because they wanted more oversight, and they felt like the football program needed someone over the top of it more.
Mm-hmm.
That was going to push Frost. And
then what did Trev do immediately with Frost?
The opening meeting.
But then what? Cut his salary.
Almost
immediately, right?
And then force staff changes after that.
Cut his salary and force staff changes.
And then kind of hung him out to dry with those coach allegations over.
Yeah, the analyst.
Which
that hung him out to dry completely. Now, in hindsight, you'd look at all those things and go, yeah, Frost was in trouble. You kind of knew it at the time, though, too. Now, so go back to what Frost is saying. Why is he saying this? Why is he saying it? It's a bad look for Frost. Why? It's a bad look for Frost because it's Frost not taking ownership. It's Frost blaming it, throwing the blame elsewhere. When you know, and I know, and everybody knows that covered it at all, this was a Frost issue.
I mean, his final game in Memorial Stadium, they allowed the most yards ever in that stadium.
It was a debacle.
Like the Georgia Southern game, I'll never forget. Like, but we all were like, oh, they can't fire him though at that point because we didn't think Trev would want to pay him that extra money. But they also couldn't gamble and wait past Rutgers and Indiana because he probably would have won those games, and then you'd be firing him off wins.
Oh, it would have gotten real.
Because we saw like Mickey won those games. Then all of a sudden, people wanted Mickey to get the job.
Right.
And so, like, if Frost would have won those games, it would have been like, oh, we're back. He's got him back.
Risk.
I mean,
there was only one move at that point.
Yeah. I mean, Trev he wanted to take the shot, and that was the time to do it. And he did.
For people getting ready to say, Sipple, you weren't particularly hard on Frost. Because I wanted that last season, just to see if he could pull out of it. And I was kind of hard on Frost, by the way. People conveniently forget some of the columns I write. But that last season, so the last season was what, 20?
Yeah, he coached 3 games of the 22 season.
Okay, so that season, it spun out of control so fast and became so evident of what was going on. Ripping him at that point, we were, but it didn't really mean anything. The point is, it spun out of control fast. The whole, let's just wait to see if Frost can pull this plane out of a tailspin. It was never even it wasn't happening. It was terrible. What happened in Dublin? Bad loss to a team that
I honestly didn't think there was any way they could lose that game in Ireland. I thought they had that game easily.
So they lose to
a team that won 1 game.
They lose in Dublin. And we come back and they're going to play North Dakota. And I've told that story to you about how I ran into Eric Chenander outside the stadium 2 days after they got back from Dublin. And I talked to Chenander and we were man to man, just having a man to man discussion. I said, you got this? You think you got this under control? He hedged and I saw the eyes. I've seen fear in coach's eyes and it was there. He knew. Sean, I'm going to tell you something. Eric Chenander knew at that moment they were in trouble. I walked away from him, and I think I called you and said they're in trouble. They're in trouble. He didn't have a handle on it.
Then Georgia Southern came in and just
Chenander knew that he didn't have it under control. And you saw it against Georgia Southern.
They were playing like soft shell defense, and Georgia Southern was just taking free yards the whole game.
Troy Helton was like Nick Saban. I mean, he schooled
Clay Helton.
Yeah, Clay. I'm so sorry.
Come on, James Palmer.
I'm so you got me. Thanks for having my back. Clay Helton schooled Nebraska like you'll see few coaches school a team. Schooled them.
Well,
it's over.
They kept recognizing like Tommy Hill was playing way off, and they're like, okay, we'll just keep throwing it 8-10 yards, keep taking it.
So you had a great point earlier in the week. Frost has got to stop doing this now. He's going to have a lot, and you made a great point. He's going to have a lot of opportunities now because he's going to be in front of the mic again. He went 2 years without being in front of a mic. Now he's going to be in front of a mic. Don't do this, Frost. Don't do it.
Mainly because if you do, around here, there's like 55,000 sports talk shows and YouTubers.
And here we are.
And every one of them is going to, like, in a place like Nebraska with a lot of microphones, everyone's going to talk about it.
I like Frosty. I would tell him, don't do this. Just leave Nebraska out of it.
Turn the page.
Yeah. Wow, that sounded like somebody familiar.
Turn the page. Sorry. All right. I got you.